What's going on, guys? So a lot of people ask us, is it really easy to install PPF on your car? And I wouldn't say necessarily easy, but it's definitely easier if you have the resources and the tools, which we try to provide. So we're gonna show you how I install a hood of one of our kits on the Model 3 2024 long range. This is not necessarily instructional, but we wanted to kind of walk you through more of like a summary version of what the install would look like. But if you do want to see some of the installs, you can go to our website at courses.testbros.com, where we actually give you some sample lessons, where you can watch some of it and really see the step-by-step guide, okay? First off, I'm going to share a bunch of like pro tips too along the way. Is what I like to actually do when I do PPF is I put this rubber block. And the reason why I do this is because I like to have it more leveled. It's still angled down a little bit, but it allows the water to escape a little bit better, or slip solution to escape, right? So if it's flush to the fenders, what happens is a lot of that water and moisture will kind of live around that area, and that'll seep back up, and then it could cause bubbles around the edges. So I like to elevate it a little bit. You're gonna need some pressure, so you want something pretty hard. So now that we have that ready, we're gonna go ahead and we got this electric spray. This saves a lot of time, to be honest. We give you the standard sprayer, which is awesome too because it's a double action spray. But this is an additional if you want to get the electric spray. Honestly, this is awesome for cleaning too. So one thing that I wanted to show is, for the most part, since we've gotten this car, we've PPF'd it. And we've done a lot of R&D on it and stuff. But in between the time that we did not have it PPF, got a giant ding right here. This is actually right into that, past that primer, and it's into the metal. So it's a very deep, must be a really big rock. So that's exactly why you want to put PPF, because it will protect you from rock chips and stuff like that. And we did a video about the difference between ceramic coating, so we'll put a link below as well. But ceramic coating does not actually protect from rock chips and things like that. It is more for the elements, UV, and things like that. So what we're doing at this point is we have this clean, typically I use a brand new Squeegee. I like using brand new ones just because I'm not gonna contaminate anything. But what we're doing is we're doing a final contamination check, right? So we're just making sure that all debris is off the actual car, okay? And then if it's not, then we can actually clay bar it or whatever we need to do. But what happens is in between the time that you do some of your preps and stuff, there's gonna be dust and things that settle on the car. So right before you lay film, you wanna do this, where you're essentially just spraying it a lot and then just getting it all down so that you can just make sure that all contamination is off the actual vehicle. So I'm not doing it hard, by the way, guys. You never really wanna force anything whenever you work on cars anyway. So once we got all that first layer off, we're just gonna spray it down. And here's one thing that I think a lot of people learn a little bit too late, is they're a little bit too stingy with their slip solution. I mean, you wanna spray this thing down. And if there's a dry spot, you'll have an area that it will stick somewhere. And then if it's trying to shift and stretch a little bit, and because there's a dry spot, it's gonna cause imperfections in the film and so on. Right, so that's why you want to spray a lot. I'm going to do this solo, so I'm just going to go ahead and kind of remove some of the slip solution out of this side, and I'll show you exactly why in a second. So I have this all wet except this corner, and I'll kind of explain why. We're going to do something called reverse roll method. This is a pretty common method that I show in a lot of our videos. And what we want to do first is just kind of lay this down, and it's going to be very sticky because why? I actually remove that slip solution underneath that. And then once you have it here, check this out. This is the laying, because it's laid down just like that, right? So maybe it's not as easy as that, but I've been doing that for a long time. So practice makes perfect. You'll get better though. But essentially, you had solution on the car, but you didn't actually have solution on the film itself. So what we're doing is we're pulling it back up, and you hear the sound of like, that means that there's dry spots. So recognize that sound if you hear that. Oops, that's a little too much. It's okay. Like, I'm pretty. All right, so now I've sprayed underneath. I've got all the dry spots, and this is what we call it. Like, we call it shimmy shimmy, right? Because we're like moving it. And you see how easy that moves? There's not an area, and I like doing it in all areas, where it's not moving, right? So that's exactly what you're trying to do. So once you're at that spot, you want to just gently align everything. Like, you don't have to have it perfect. These big bubbles are bad, by the way, so you want to eventually get rid of it. But I'm just going to go ahead and just like move it around a little bit, making sure it's still good all across the board. All right, cool. So that looks good to me. And what we're going to do is we're just going to align it. And the way we designed this is this corner, of course, you could go like a pro install. You could bulk it. You could really get in there. But there is some chances of like it coming back up. So it goes right to the corner, and there's about like a 1.5 centimeter or something like that past that, and then it folds over. So whenever you do this, I don't hold this corner. I actually hold around it. And then after that, I just squeegee that down. About, I would say, let's just go ahead and do about like 3-4 inches. And then once you get that down, you confirm that's good. Then you could go to the other side and then just make sure that this side is also good. So again, holding the perimeter of that and then squeegeeing that down as well. Cool. So that looks awesome. Again, 3-4 inches of that. And then, luckily, check this out. This logo fit like perfectly right here. So you can see it just kind of, like I didn't have to do anything, but there is a logo cut out. So then what you want to do at this point is we use something called tack solution. I know a lot of you guys who have watched your channel probably know what it is, but I'm going to explain it. It is a mix of alcohol and water, mostly water, but it's clean water, like distilled water. And what this does is it activates the adhesive more aggressively, right? So certain areas like this, it has a little bit weaker surface energy right here. We want to spray into that once it's all aligned, and then go ahead and just tack this down. We call it tacking it down, right? And we want to make sure that this is completely tacked down. There we go. And why? Because this area will carry a lot of water because it's going to travel around that area. We just want to make sure that it doesn't go back into that. So we've kind of created like a box around it, which is exactly what we want. And then look at this one right here. It's naturally have gone right to the edge, and that's kind of what it's supposed to be, right? So if the template is solid. And one thing that I think we pride ourselves on the way we do this stuff is we actually design our templates in-house, right? So we don't actually just like, we pretty much sometimes we work off a scan, sometimes we work off analog, but there's a lot of ways we do it. But we made a lot of edits. I think this one still had, I mean like micro edits, but like we still had like more than 10 edits on this hood just to make sure that like we'll add material here or take out material so that it's a little bit easier for you guys. So we try to do it like that, okay? So this one is custom kit. You can see that it actually goes around the edges, so we'll show you a little bit of that. But I don't want to talk too much at this point because we've sealed a lot of these areas and we need to squeegee it out before it dries out, right? So it's not like you have like a time bomb, like you need to do it right now, but you definitely want to do it pretty quickly. So first step is you want to go away from the logo and you want to go down the center. By doing that, you've pretty much created this line, which is a visual line as well, and then we're going to create it in 4 quadrants because it's a little bit easier to explain, I think, when it's in like 4 quadrants like this. And then we're going to do the same thing on this side as well. Okay, so we created 4 quadrants just like that. I guess like a cross. And then now we can work off here, 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 right? And if you still need to spray more, you can actually get a little bit underneath it and then get it, but you should be fine. But don't be afraid to spray on top again, because if you don't have slip solution on top, what happens? It doesn't glide and it stops. It could create marks and so on. One thing about these areas that I didn't actually tack it down, but these areas that I did squeegee early on, what happens as it dries, the adhesive does get stronger. So you never want to go back to that area, right? And that's when water gets trapped right here and it does create a line. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go kind of away first, and then I'm just going to go the exit. There's a standard exit right here. So, I'm just going to go ahead, kind of get all this water out. And then notice how I'm overlapping everything, guys. I'm overlapping more than 50% sometimes. But again, same thing, holding with his 4 fingers. And then, just like that. Let's go ahead and get the next part. So again, where do we tack? We tacked right here. We don't actually want to go back right here because we did use alcohol at this point. So we want to go away from it. So what we want to do then is just kind of go sideways in and then away from that logo. And then while you're doing this, you just want to look at this alignment right here. I mean, it is just absolutely perfect right here. Why is there a little cut? Well, it does have a curvature, and if you don't have the cut, the material is going to scrunch up as it folds over. So in order to relieve that, we call it a relief cut. So we already add that relief cut for you, so you don't actually have to use a knife. And by the way, none of our kits, we don't even give a knife because you don't really even need it. So we're going to go ahead. It's been some time, so I'm going to just spray on top. And one pro tip that we also shared is like your squeegee, I like to keep like a little cup, and I put it inside it. It always keeps it clean. This is one of those that like a lot of people don't realize, but this can contaminate your film too. But I'm going away from that logo again, and then you can see how clean that is. And look at that alignment, perfect right here. And so this is what we call fingers, and fingers are wrinkles. What this is typically the material doesn't necessarily stretch wide enough, and there's some extra material, but this is a very, very small finger. So if you have something that small, you just need to spray some tack or some water and just push it down, just like that. And if it keeps coming up, remember I told you about that water, and this is why I elevated. Look at all this water that just sits here, the water and slip solution, right? This is exactly why I like to elevate it. We got a small one just right here. Look at that. Okay. Before we move on, we always do a double take. We pretty much go back to exactly what you did other than the tack points, right? Because those are more permanent. So I went straight up. I created, I mean, obviously not like exact, created the 4 path, right? I went inside here. And I actually saw a minor, very, very minor bubble right here that I just got out. And then after that, and this is where you could go a little bit more rough, right? You could see it, I mean, you don't want to go so hard you're bending your hood that much, but you do want to have some oomph to it, right? So same thing. Like I said, these are the areas that's going to hold a lot of water because a lot of people try to put it back to where it's not supposed to, and then the water just stays there, right? When you're doing this, guys, another reminder to make sure you have a lot of slip on top, right? Because you're gliding a little bit harder too, which means that you need some lubrication on top of the film as well. So in this case, it was a lot easier. Could just go straight up. And I'm just inspecting it, right? And it looks phenomenal. Like there's no major bubbles. And if it's like a small bubble, guys, don't worry. It's gonna dry out for the most part. If it's a giant bubble, you could syringe it out or you could pop it. So now that we're done, I'm gonna go grab some microfiber real quick. I've had a lot of nights where like when I was first learning to, and I think all PPF installers kind of go through this. It's like they get done, and typically it happens when they're working late and they start losing some focus. And then there's like a hair or there's like a giant bubble in the middle, something like that. So now that double take I mentioned, I do that for that reason, right? I don't want to have to go back or add more time to my work. So at this point, what you're doing is you're drying it off, right? and you're inspecting it in different light and different angles, you might have some discoloration from the squeegee strokes. That will all dry out, so that's not really an issue. But you're looking for big bubbles that you think you can get out, or contamination. In this case, I don't see a hair, I don't really see anything on it. It's a pretty clean install. And once you're good, this is what we do. We call it sealing the deal, right? So what that means is you want to get all this stuff right here. You want to spray it all down with alcohol, or typically I even use just distilled water, like clean water. You don't even need to necessarily use like alcohol. So what you're doing, guys, here is well, that was a lot of oomph to that one. So what you're essentially doing is you're removing the slips. You see when I was spraying it, it was kind of removing that foam. That's what's kind of causing it for it not to stick. But once you remove that from here I'll show you. Hopefully this one I can do it right away. But you want to flush it all out, remove all that foam and the slip solution. And once you do that, it dries. Then you could pretty much use like a vinyl tool and a wrap glove, and you could go over the edges. So I don't know if I could show you in this video, but let me just try if you can at least do like this little small section right here, right? But you see how like I'm trying to clear it out from all the bubbles. And then once you get to this point, you can start folding it over. What I'm trying to have it do is kind of hug this edge right here, right? Because you don't want any bubbles in the edge. And then, probably help if I open the thing, but it's okay. Yeah, so it needs to dry out a little bit, but you can see that it will fold all the way over, which means that you have ultimate protection. The only area that it won't really fold over is going to be, right, these corners right here, literally like 1.5 centimeters, right? So this is one of those things where like we really tried to make sure that it was even, like all the way throughout, like the right amount of material. And this is the right amount of material in our experience of like, if I were to cut it, I would pretty much exactly put this much. If you are a learning installer though, and you want to see the differences between bulking and doing a template, we did do a video on the bumper with this car as well, so you can check it out in the link below. But that pretty much sums it up. I hope this wasn't, I'm trying to make it realistic. Like obviously I've installed a lot of film, so I'm trying to keep that in mind and not make it like look too easy and say that it's going to be the easiest thing you've ever done. This isn't necessarily easy, and I'm never going to tell people that. It does require discipline and it does require a lot of work. But if you like doing do-yourself projects, this is the kit. I mean, this is going to be a lot easier. You're going to save a lot of time. And of course, most importantly, you're going to save a lot of money and you get to do it in your own garage. So I think with that convenience and savings in mind, it's definitely worth it. But hopefully you guys learned something while I install this hood. I'm going to let this dry. I'm going to fold it over. But let us know if you have any questions in the comments below. We have a lot more PPF videos with this Model 3 Highland, so stay tuned. We'll see you later.